Welcome to Shifting Veils. My name is Michelle,
And I am Isaiah.
and this is where we talk about things we find just outside of Clearview. So if you like the unexplained, possibly paranormal, and always strange, stick around a while as we explore the possibilities of what is beyond our natural senses.
And tonight we'll be talking about the Greenbrier Ghost.
In 1897, the unexplained death of Zona Heaster Shoe sent the community of Lewisburg in Greenbrier County, West Virginia, into a shock. Shortly after Zona's death, her mother claimed to have been visited by her daughter's ghost, who claimed to be able to identify her killer. There would be a murder case and trial that would follow, and it would be the first and only of its kind in U.S. history because it would hinge on the testimony of a ghost.
In the summer of 1896, Erasmus Stribling Shoe moved from Droop Mountain in Pocahontas County, West Virginia, to the quiet village of Livesay's Mill in Greenbrier County. Erasmus was tall, and many of the community ladies found him to be handsome. He accepted a job at James Cruikshank's blacksmith shop. He often introduced himself as Edward, but everybody called him Trout. Shortly after his arrival, Erasmus met a farmer's daughter named Elva Zona Heaster. Zona took up an attraction to Erasmus almost immediately. They courted for only a few months and were married at the Methodist Church on October 20th, 1896. For all outward appearances, they seemed to be happy.
I would think so. They barely got past, like, the 3-month mark, it sounds like. They're
As
still in
a,
the honeymoon stage.
I was just gonna say the
Literally.
honeymoon stage.
So 3 months later, on a Saturday morning, Erasmus asked a young neighbor of the Shoes to stop by their house to ask Zona if she needed any help with anything. When he made it into their homes, or excuse me, when he made it to their homestead, he felt something wasn't right. The whole house was dark and it was quiet.
Well, they
So
just
he
didn't pay their electric bill.
maybe, maybe. Um, she ran out of matches. I don't know. What are they using? Lamps? I'm not even
It's
sure.
1890. I don't know if
Oil
that's that
lamps?
far back, but I,
I don't even know. I feel I feel
I,
dumb now.
I was just gonna say, I feel like I failed history at this point.
It's been a lot of years since I had that class. So anyway, so he knocks on the door and he's calling for her, and when she didn't answer, he went inside. Once he was in there, he found her lifeless body lying at the bottom of the stairs. So he immediately runs home, tells his mom what he found. Then he runs to the blacksmith shop where Erasmus is working and tells him. Erasmus runs home quickly. Once he gets there, it's reported that he's acting inconsolable. He's wailing, he's crying, he's just beside himself with grief, it seems. And he directs that the local doctor, Dr. Knapp, be called to his house. Once the doctor gets there, he finds Erasmus hold, holding Zona, specifically holding her head in his arms. And anytime the doctor would try to examine her body, Erasmus would get really loud, more inconsolable, and basically just not really allow Dr. Knapp to do his job, which was to try to evaluate Zona's body and find out what had happened. So after this brief examination, I'm sorry, were you wanting to say something?
No, I'm sorry. I can think is like I'm picturing Erasmus sitting there holding Zona in like a full Nelson, like
Right? I know. He's holding her head. Well, in my mind, I'm picturing like just her head, like her not attached to her body head holding. When I was reading the story, it it sounded like he just had her head and okay, something's clearly changed since yeah, the boy found her body. But anyway, what little examination Dr. Knapp could conduct, he decides to declare that Zona has died of an everlasting faint, otherwise known as a heart attack. Later on, before the burial case was closed, he did suggest that maybe she died due to a miscarriage because it was thought she might have been pregnant, but I don't know where the miscarriage is. There's no evidence of the aborted fetus. So, uh,
And this is gonna sound a little well unknowledgeable, like I don't know, I guess, realistically. But at what point is there a fetus for there like to be a fetus that's aborted with like within the female body? Is it 3 months when there's a fetus? Because there's that state where it's still an egg growing into a fetus, right?
it's
So
like a zygote.
right, so that would still be, but usually the body can pass an abortion like that
Hmm.
through regular means of just like almost like using the restroom, right?
It's still going to be obvious that it happened. There would still be evidence of it.
Okay, but what kind of restrooms are we using at this point? Is this like a hole in the ground sort of thing, or is this
I
like
don't know. I don't
flush it
know.
down the
Something
toilet?
to be considered,
I'm getting
I'm
a little dark
sure.
here. I'm
There's
sorry.
I yeah, I don't know. Probably an outhouse.
Yeah, so she had symptoms of being pregnant, probably morning sickness, you know, exhaustion.
Likely, yeah.
Yeah, so
If she was having symptoms, um that would be it, yeah.
okay,
Tired, sick.
yeah. So I can't tell you. I've not been pregnant yet.
Really?
Right?
Never.
Never, not once.
Wow.
I know it's surprising, especially
It
with
is.
this freaking striking lady figure, but
I know. Yeah, I'm really shocked.
I know
I'm
these
really
hips
shocked.
don't lie. So I think we should point out that between when Zona was found and when Dr. Knapp arrived, Erasmus had moved her to the bedroom and redressed her into clothing that she would otherwise not wear, at least according to her mother, Mary Jane.
Nice name, by the way.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this is the same Mary Jane that Tom Petty wrote about, or
Maybe. Could be.
this is the last dance right here. The clothing being a high collar and large veil with a large bow tied under her chin. So, very much so indicative of hiding something, I would think, at this
Suffocating.
point. Absolutely. You. It's another thing. I never got to wear a veil, but the high collar, like a large bow tie under the chin, we've worn that before. So, this is an odd behavior only because, well, that's not only because. This is odd behavior just because you'd wait for the
Because.
doctor to come visit. But
Right.
this is an odd behavior also because the ladies of the community, the women of the community, would usually be the ones to prepare the dead for the wake, for burial. So they'd be there to do the makeup, the hair, the clothing, get them situated for the whole thing to go.
Yeah, that is really weird.
Zona was buried in the clothing that Erasmus also put her in. And by all accounts, it was said that no one was allowed to approach the casket very closely. And I also want to mention, since I'm at this point in the story, that Zona was moved to her mother's house to do the wake. So this wasn't taking place at Zona and Erasmus's house. The wake was
Mm.
moved over to Mary Jane's house,
Okay.
and this wake took place there. So there was movement of the body, in which there were witnesses there that we'll get to that saw the body being moved. But no one was allowed to approach the casket very closely with Zona there.
Not even mom
Not even mom. Mary Jane wasn't even allowed there.
in her house.
In her own house, she was not allowed to see her own daughter
Her.
at the head of her house.
I'd be pissed.
Yeah, absolutely, as a parent. Erasmus didn't leave the wake for a single moment. He was always there at the head, where the casket sat. standing there. And they say that he didn't leave the house, he didn't leave the room in the entire time that the wake was being held, not to use the restroom, not to eat, not to sleep, not to rest, not to sit. He was just there. There was a pillow on one side of her head and a folded up piece of clothing on the other side of her head. And Erasmus had placed those there, saying that they were there for the purpose of helping her rest.
I think she's resting pretty good, my guy.
I, I
I mean,
mean, you can get her a memory foam pillow. That would make things better, but and
yeah.
so it seems his overly dramatic displays of being inconsolable and moving and dressing Zona before the doctor arrived, coupled with not knowing or not allowing those at the wake to approach, were beginning to cause some suspicion.
Um, so not only is Mary Jane angry, she's I think she'd be especially suspicious. Um,
Very much so.
it said that she didn't even want Zona to marry Erasmus. Their courtship was short. He was new to the area, and she just didn't really seem to like him. It may have been because before he was married to Zona, he had two other wives, and his first marriage ended in divorce. His second marriage ended in her death. Um, there isn't an official death record for Lucy Tritt, which was his second wife. So her cause of death is unknown. However, there were a lot of rumors going around because the circumstances surrounding her death were mysterious. It seems that she took a blow to the head, which he at one time said was caused by falling and hitting her head on a rock. Another time, he claimed that some, like a rock or a brick, fell on her head while she was helping him with something. So I think the
I,
story's just kind of muddled.
I mean, how
That
many bricks are falling to cause something like this?
I, yeah, I don't know. So I'm thinking uh, that, mom is just kind of suspicious of this new guy. She doesn't really know him that well. No one really does. He's new, and they didn't court for very long.
Y-
So
yeah,
yeah,
how often, I mean, even as, like, even now, how many times do we meet somebody brand new and, well, I can't really say that because there's a lot of people that post videos of, we just met each other 3 months ago online and now we're getting married and moving in together.
it
So I can't really say that now. Never mind. Let's scratch that.
happens.
Yeah,
It
I was
just
gonna
doesn't
say.
mean it's a good thing to happen necessarily. I think anyone can pretend to be something or somebody else for about 3 months, and then after that, you start seeing the real them.
Yeah.
So it's just not a smart move. But clearly, at this point, Zona's mom is beside herself with anger and with grief um, by the way Erasmus is behaving. And she's now consumed with suspicion. She begins fervently praying to God and her daughter that her daughter would tell her what happened to her. And according to Mary, Zona came to her 4 times accusing Erasmus of being abusive and cruel, killing her over not having a proper dinner prepared for him. I think she
Yeah.
prepared like uh, breads and jams and things like that, but
And
he was upset she didn't have meat.
she didn't have trout for dinner.
I do wonder if that is why he was named Trout or nicknamed Trout. Because the other option is just that he was fishy. So I don't.
I I mean, he's proven pretty clear that he's a fishy character.
More of a snake than
Right. Snake in
fishy.
the
But
grass.
um, anyway, she said that she appeared to her 4 times, and she accused Erasmus of being abusive. She said she got killed over not having a proper dinner prepared for him. Um, The ghost of Zona proceeded to both show and tell her mother during these 4 visits that she was strangled so violently that her first 2 vertebrae had broken apart. By showing, I mean that on one occasion, her ghost proceeded to turn her head 180 degrees. Like he
Is,
just
it,
snapped her neck.
is that in Fahrenheit?
No.
Oh, yeah.
No.
So that'd be a frightening scene to see. Your own kid, right? I mean, ghost or not, seeing the head spin 180 degrees, going
Right?
full exorcist.
That's your own child. That's,
I
I
mean,
don't know.
and that's something that's indicative of how relationships can be in and outside closed doors, right?
Definitely.
And like you were just saying, it's easy to pretend. I mean, there's a lot of
It
people out there
is.
that will pretend to be one thing out in a crowd and another thing when it's just them and the one that they think and know that they can either hush or trust.
Yeah.
Not saying that that is the case, but kind of looks like that is the
It
case.
kind of looks like it. Yeah. Kind of does. Unfortunately.
So all of this provoked Mary further to appeal to have Dr. Knapp exhume the body alongside the county prosecutor. Given Erasmus's behavior, they decided to go ahead and exhume the body. During this exhumation and second autopsy, it was found that Zona it did indeed have a broken neck, a crushed windpipe, as well as bruising marks of fingerprints on her neck. Her neck was in fact broken between the first 2 vertebrae, just as she was told by Zona. As a ghost, I'm sorry, I kind of lost track of my words there. That's my fault. I apologize.
You're all good.
The trial did not last long, as trials back then did not last long, not like today, when they last years or decades. On June 22nd, 1897, Erasmus Shue was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison thanks to the testimony of the deceased Zona. Although if you find the trial in the Independent, the local newspaper, it will say he was convicted on circumstantial evidence and not a ghost testimony. During his sentence in prison in Moundsville, he would die at the start of a flu epidemic in March of 1900. Now, I realize I didn't put that in the notes here, but there was a lynching mob at the time too, and also at the testimony. Sorry, I'm backtracking on my little paragraph here for a second here.
No, you're okay. I was gonna ask you, wasn't there like a lynching that had been organized?
That yeah, there was a lynching that like had formed. Whether or not it was headed by Mary or not, I don't know, but there was a lynching of the
Wouldn't
entire town,
surprise.
the entire community, that was ready to go and literally just lynch Erasmus here at the prison. But at the time, he was also the prison had found out about the lynching that was headed their way, and they moved Erasmus to a safe house during the time. So even if the lynch mob did show up to the prison to lynch him, and they were able to get in and get past all the guards and all that stuff, it wouldn't have happened because he wasn't even there.
I think what's happening here with the lynching mob is hindsight, because now you have a deceased Zona, and you have the second wife that is deceased, and you have the first wife that was divorced, and the story on the second wife, her death is suspicious. The circumstances surrounding it are suspicious, and he's been convicted of, murdering Zona. So this guy just really, he seems to be extremely hated among this community and the community, I think it was a neighboring community where the other 2 wives were from.
Right.
So there's a lot of family members and community members and friends that don't feel like justice is being served by a life sentence, most likely, and want him offed. And I can't say I blame them. Honestly, if I was a
I'm,
sheriff, I probably would have released him and just
I'm,
let them
yeah, right.
conduct justice, you know?
Part of me wonders, and I doubt this is true, but part of me thinks, maybe it just took that long for the other towns to like their lynch mobs to show up to the next town and then the next town, and then it was just like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
because like, we don't even know for sure if like that first marriage did end in divorce. Maybe it ended in divorce. I don't know. It's a case of not really knowing
All
what happened there.
records say divorce. So then you might have the testimony
Hmm.
of the first wife saying, "Oh yeah, he's definitely an asshole. You know,
Right.
he's abusive. I know, he murdered I can't remember the second wife's name, but I know he
Trip.
murdered her and yeah. So it's just yeah,
Uh,
hindsight.
Speaking of testimonies too, the thing I was going to mention and I kind of walked over was they also had people at this testimony, this hearing here, mentioning that when Erasmus had moved the body, Zona's body, from their house to the mother's house, Mary Jane's house, that they saw the house as, and it's the word you like to hear, they saw the body's head get floppy. It was flopping back and forth, so it was a little loose
Yeah.
up there.
Yeah. That's why he had the pillow and the clothing propping her head.
Hmm.
Keep it from doing that. Yeah. um I'm gonna wrap up her story if you don't have anything else to add.
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. Zona Heistershoe is the only ghost to officially be recognized as aiding in the conviction of a criminal in a U.S. court of law. Her body is buried in the Soul Chapel Methodist Cemetery in Greenbrier County, West Virginia. She was only 21 years old when she died. On her headstone, it actually does read the Greenbrier Ghost, which I think is kind of, I
It's
mean, it's neat, but I don't know. 21
it's
years old, it's just a really, really sad, it ends being a really sad story to me.
it's very much so sad at 21 years that she passed, and then we
Still a
discussed.
kid.
Yeah, we discussed this before. A lot of these older cases of paranormal and stuff like that that we're looking at, which, Greenbrier and the Bell Witch, that's the women are always younger. They're younger and they are victims to bad things.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately.
And I mean, that's if that Greenbrier Ghost is like an edit, like if they went back to that headstone and put that in there to like gain that fame for it and everything, that's kind of shitty
Yeah,
because
I don't know. This isn't an old stone. This is, you can tell it is a newer stone. This
okay.
isn't from the 1800s. So she might not have had a proper marker back when. I have no idea. But I do think about that a little bit. We talked about the revenue that the Bell Witch
Hmm.
haunting gains. I Something like that, them going and adding that to the stone, um, could be looked at as that. But at the same time, I also kind of feel like it's giving credit to the ghost of Zona aiding in the conviction of her own killer.
That's true.
Maybe.
That's
Maybe.
no, that. But also, I was just thinking, what if the headstone that has Greenbrier Ghost on it? I know it doesn't just have Greenbrier Ghost on it, but what if that headstone was just a placekeeper for, somewhere away from the actual like burial? There are cases where they want to keep the actual burials, away from a lot of foot tread, you know.
It's
So
possible.
I'm not saying it is or isn't, but that's just a possibility that came to mind,
It's
you know,
possible.
so people can come and be like, oh yeah, I saw the Greenbrier Ghost headstone.
Yeah. Regardless, I hope she's resting at this point.
Yeah. The only reason why I think that is because I would think that Mary Jane would, on the actual headstone, have something noted on there that is more
Personal?
personal, loving, memorable,
Yeah,
meaningful. You
maybe
know.
so.
All right. You think we've touched on everything?
I do.
All right. Then I believe that will wrap tonight's episode up. Let's close our books, close our tabs, and close our minds until next time when we discuss the Beast of Gévaudan. I'm Isaiah,
I am Michelle.
and this has been Shifting Veils.